May not get any live viewers today though.
I know Peter Souza just left and just ended his show, and Peter's going like in 30 minutes.
That's
right.
I mean, because we just scheduled it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we super busy week for Patrick and I. We just both traveled back from Wodland Fest. Patrick has a ton of stuff going on with Army and normal life and work for him there. I got back to Chicago yesterday, drove up to Wisconsin today. We're in full on prep mode for WFP that's in a few days from now. But we did spend the weekend in Malaga and have had an opportunity to be involved with that competition, provide the live stream for it, but also just see a ton of athletes compete, talk to a ton of athletes, coaches, etc. And it was a great weekend. Obviously, we wanted to take some time and make sure that we give some credit to what happened there, to the athletes out there, to maybe talk about some of the ones that didn't, just look at the leaderboards, the results, share the experiences that we had with you. So, because we just scheduled it, Lynn.
Sorry, Lynn.
We knew that we wouldn't have a lot of leeway. What is this? Thanks for keeping me company at the hospital this weekend.
Hopefully you're okay.
Yay. No, she's working probably.
Oh, duh. I'm an idiot. First off, you got out of Spain before the power outage.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know what athletes were affected by. I think Roman was affected by it. I know there was a few athletes. I know I talked to Dan Ty and Sapphire. They were planning on sticking around for a couple days afterwards. Obviously, that's what they do. So I don't know if there's any athletes that of that were affected. Obviously, especially athletes traveling that were affected by the power outage.
Well, I left flight out of Malaga 6 a.m. on Monday. And by the time I went through Paris, and in Paris's airport, I got a few messages from people saying flights are canceled. You're still in town. You want to hang out or something? Couple athletes, couple coaches, but for the most part, it's just if you didn't get out early that morning, then you missed your flight because everything was shut down and had to kind of figure it out. But pretty strange situation. And yeah, lots of athletes some are still there. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are worse places to be. I mean, if you're going to be trapped anywhere or whatever, but Malaga is a bad place, I guess.
Yeah, you and I both said it to each other before we left. The biggest regret of the weekend was we didn't have a chance to really go and see Malaga at all. So, we just basically were landed straight to work, finished competition, and took off. So. But it was super late planning to be there. There was initially a plan for a broadcast, and it didn't end up working out. Alfonso is a good friend of mine. I've worked with him in the past at many competitions around the world. He's one of the key competition organizers in Spain, and is also integral with sort of the Loud and Live family, working events in a lot of the Spanish-speaking countries that are linked in with them. So when he called us and asked to do it, even though there was basically no budget for that, we spent a couple of days thinking about it and decided that it was something that needed to be done. So many good athletes competing there from all over Europe and all over the world, and really happy that we did it. Huge amount. I mean, I didn't feel like we got the full support for doing that, but from everybody who could be supportive of it, including CrossFit. It's their qualifying event, and but there was a ton of people who watched, a ton of people who sent positive, uplifting messages, and at the end of the day, I think we did a good thing. So I have a high standard for those types of things, and I know that I dropped the ball in a couple areas relative to what I would expect to do, but. I would say it was like the highest level, or the biggest stage of a competition that we've done that for, with very little notice, very little support. Like usually Rodri would be on the back end helping with a lot of that stuff, but we found out about it so late. He had commitments with his wife, had a competition she was doing for weightlifting and some other stuff that he couldn't be around for. So he did everything that he could to help with the setup. But pretty much once we got going, it was just just doing what I could there on the ground. And I watched back a little bit of it, and I think that overall it showed, what happened there, and that was the intention.
First off, you keep on saying we. I had nothing to do with it. I was there, for support. Yeah, it was all Brian. It really was Brian. You can be, and I'm not blowing smoke up anyone's ass when I say that. It's like that was you. You did it all. I mean, how it comes. How I feel about like, you had a good handle on it, and I know it was kind of last minute, and there were certain things. I mean, obviously there's some complaints here and there, and there's some things that, like I said, in retrospect, oh, you would have done differently. But at the end of the day, you told the story. You told the story.
At the end of the day, no I
Yeah.
excuse us. We did our best, and it's out there for people to watch.
No, you told the story, and I think in every conversation I had. I mean, the conversation I had with Moritz, with Elisa, with with Lucy, with all the athletes, even Roman. He was just like he was just happy to see that you were there providing coverage, and and it shows. And so a special shout out to everyone that supports us. And the ones that normally don't follow us, but they showed up, they watched it, and I think at the end of the day, we did something that you wouldn't have seen otherwise, and you told a very story, and I don't think anyone can question your knowledge when it comes to the athletes, especially in that particular that field where there was outside of the last two heats, there's a lot of unknowns, and you're able to tell their story, introduce them, whether it be someone like like I don't know, Diana.
What was really nice was that they had the check-in, and I was able to go there. It was like the first thing I basically did when I got on site on Thursday, and it was I just stood at the front of the line and talked to. I knew so many of the people, and what was also cool is that there were these little contingencies or groups of athletes from specific countries. So, like there was an Icelandic contingency there. And I knew some of them and not all of them, but they were checking in together. So I said hi to the ones I knew, was introduced to the ones I didn't, got to ask them one or two things. All I needed to know knowing one thing about an athlete like Ingi Jonsson, for example, who, by the way, didn't get to actually show this because the sandbag blew him up, but he's like an amazing runner. And I'd actually covered one competition he's done before. He won the running event. So to be able to say something like that before he took the floor for the first workout, for example. And then as they went to check in, then the next group kind of moved up in the line, and I talked to them, and I just spent 2 hours basically doing this and then trying to remember what we talked about when we were live on the broadcast.
No, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you did what you had to do, and you accomplished everything. And I think, I think it was Lynn that says there, like she has some new favorite athletes. And before we get into the competition, I just like, there's something we had to talk about last night when you're like falling half asleep was like, I think my best memory of the weekend was like when me, you, Facundo, John Singleton, and Nick, Fowler, were just sitting around, just talking. I mean, when John Singleton brought up the question, like which, the whole like what games best, what games programming would you consider would be the best, test of fitness, and just stuff like that. Like that's what happens when you get like those stewards of the sport, those historians of the sport. I mean, we're talking about three guys that have been around since from the beginning almost. Facundo is a little bit later in the game, but Facundo is like that guy's so plugged in and such a student of the sport and the community. It was just so cool just to be every time we do an event, just to be a part of those conversations. And I'm just so grateful that and to do it at a competition in Malaga in a little cafeteria coffee shop. It was just awesome. So that's what obviously a lot of great athletes, a lot of great stories, an amazing. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it was one, thank you for everyone for supporting us, and two, thank you, Brian, for allowing me again to be a part of this journey. It's just so cool. It was great seeing you. It's been a minute since we've seen each other. And yeah, it was just really cool, and proud of you, dude.
Well, let's should we get into it?
Yeah, sure. Let's jump right into it. Let me pull this up here. Share screen.
If anyone's just catching this and not sure what we're talking about for some reason, Wodland Fest was the third qualifying event of this kind of new and interesting qualifying period for the CrossFit Games. Most of the athletes who signed up for this competition were pursuing an invite there. Some of them did not participate in the game season this year and were there anyway competing. And very, very difficult to qualify. Only 2 spots available again at a competition where 60 men and 55 women showed up to compete from a ton of different countries. And so, a lot of quality at the top of the leaderboard. We're going to kind of start at the top here, just look at what happened, talk about the big names and the best performances, and then work our way down and highlight a few athletes. Like maybe lower parts of the leaderboard that either caught our eye for good or bad reasons this weekend. But, I've seen some comments and questions about athletes already. I think that it's really important to keep in mind when we're talking about these athletes that this year is very strange compared to other years where you're just going to have athletes that show up to these competitions and aren't in like optimal fighting form. For most seasons, by the time you get to semifinals, it is one chance for athletes to earn a ticket to the games, which is, and it has always been, well, this year we'll see, but has always been the sole thing that every athlete in the sport is pursuing. At the highest level, there has never been anything better than qualifying for the games. And everybody who is even close to good enough to doing that, that's what they're seeking. And if the path is a semifinal and there's only one in your part of the world, you have to be ready for that. This year, it's not so black and white. We have athletes in this field. Well, one, Roman, who already did an event a couple of weeks before. We have many who will be doing another qualifying event, or maybe it's already started with the semifinal online that's coming up, in these upcoming days. There's others that this is their first competition that they've ever done at this level because, you heard some of the athletes say it didn't feel like a semifinal. People who've been at them previously, because it's not like previous semifinals because of some of the reasons I outlined. So have a little bit of context when we're talking about these athletes, that some of them are a little broken down or beaten down. Some of them maybe didn't come into this with the normal level that they would for a traditional semifinal. And then, in a case of like someone like Andrea Solberg, like think about all the things that are like she showed up to this. She has the opportunity to the online semifinal this week. She qualified for WFP Tour Stop 1. That's the week after. So after one day of competition, whether it was a performance didn't go the way she wanted and she didn't like her chances and she wanted to save for something else, which I don't think I don't know that that's the case. I'm just saying it's a potential. Or she was feeling like something doesn't feel quite right. Probably it's not worth it to continue. Let me try my hand at online semifinals, give myself a week to recover or whatever. Athletes have to weigh these decisions in real time and also keep doors open for themselves throughout the year. So we're going to continue to see things like this where there's people registered that don't show up, people competing that pull out for strange reasons, and just to have a little bit of grace that the athletes are trying to figure this season out for themselves, just like many of us are trying to understand how some of this stuff is happening.
Yeah. And then, I talked to Andrea about it, and she, she it's been a kind of a crazy off season. Well, not off season. I mean, between the open and qualifiers that she's done, and then going right into something like this, and knowing that she has the online qualifier, and like you said, WFP. She just it just wasn't. I mean, we talked about that second event should have been an event that she was a favorite at, and she just, just listening to her body, and I think that's where a lot, like you said, a lot of the athletes are gonna have to figure this out and listen to her body. So. But one athlete who looked like he was at top form was Roman. A great performance. I mean, what notable men's athlete dropped out? I don't think any did. Any notable ones. This is a game.
Wesolowski, Benito right before the competition, but we were kind of always expecting a couple athletes like that, but no, this is, and if you watch the competition, Roman took second on the opening event. He was in first after event 2. He never gave away the first place position the rest of the weekend. He took first or second on all of the events leading into the final. He actually had by points a guaranteed first place locked up starting the final. and he still beat his time on Heavy Isabel from 2 weeks ago when he didn't need to, and it was at the end of the weekend. And the main thing for me about Roman is every competition is going to be a higher caliber of field when Roman's healthy and competing in it. When he's at his top or close to his top form, he's a championship contender, podium contender, no matter who's in the field and what the competition is. We've seen him compete for the first 2 times since the games, and he's taken third in a 5-event competition, and now first in a 7-event competition. And it looks like he's back in form. The great thing for him is he doesn't have to do the online semifinal this week. So now he can focus on the WFP. And then after that, doesn't have to worry about anything else until the CrossFit Games. And 3 weeks later, WFP Tour Stop 2. So the path for Roman this year is now much more defined of where we'll see him compete. Those are the next 3 times we should see him compete. And it definitely validated the trip to Spain. Like he got what he came for there, which is not just the games ticket, but everything that comes with it, meaning a very clear next 6 to 7 weeks where there's many athletes that we'll talk about in a second who now, they have a little bit of a decision to make.
Yeah, I think Roman, you mentioned like Roman, is kind of the season's mapped out, but him winning this, and he just looks so good. I mean, between Mayhem and this event, he looked good. He looked fresh. He looked like he was having fun, and that was kind of the questions coming in. It's like we hadn't seen him compete in over a year. He dealt with injuries, but this is very smart by Roman. I mean, Roman has had to miss out on competitions that he loves doing, whether it be Dubai, Tier SoCal, some of these other competitions,
Rogue,
and Rogue, but this is him having, bravo to him and his team, whether it be Facundo or Inga or Rich or whoever, the Mayhem team, his wife, for just having that wherewithal to kind of like, hey, be patient, and just, but the thing is now there's only 2 other people that are going to be, we'll talk about this later, but you got to see the online semifinal workouts. I love the workouts, but the thing is, it's 5 workouts. Yeah, it's 5 workouts. But think about all those athletes that are going to do the online semifinal workouts, finishing on Sunday. I think Monday might be the deadline. And then they go right into the WFP season. Roman doesn't have to worry about that. So all the guys he's competing against at WFP outside of Colton Mertens and Austin Hatfield,
not all of them. I mean, and this is something that we will talk about when we preview the WFP, because suddenly, because of what Patrick's talking about, guys like Yella Hosta, guys like Pat Vellner that are specific, girls like Emma Tall that are specifically or exclusively doing the WFP season, you can really start to see where they can come in fresh, prepared, focused, whereas others are going to be coming off of a very stressful week and maybe stressful 2 weeks.
Exactly, because I mean, there's no guarantee. Only 11 people are going to get spots from the online semifinal. But that's another conversation. But I really enjoyed it. It was really cool.
Well, the last thing I want to say about Roman, I spoke to him prior to the competition, and I basically just with some athletes, I like to just ask this stuff, and I asked him if it was okay to do an interview with him at some point during the weekend, assuming that there would be opportunities for that. And I only spoke to him once. And when in that interview, he opened it up by just saying, "I am so happy." And he was like genuinely smiling, a smile you can't fake or do anything else but interpret it to mean that he really genuinely feels that way. And I kind of followed up by just saying him like, he loves being out there competing, and he's getting a chance to do that again, and his body feels good doing it. And I think I like those interviews. Like, not every it doesn't make sense in every setting, but those are just very raw interviews because I'm just out there. There's no backdrop. There's nothing planned, and I can just give them the mic right after they finish, and it's so authentic from them. And he was, I think, even sitting on the floor, and he's just said, "I'm just so happy doing this," and it made it was cool. And I think that people who watch that could feel that from him and are both happy for him to be back, but also hopefully excited because, like I said, kind of the preface of talking about Roman, having him in the field makes the competition better.
Yeah, it definitely did. And it was great seeing him. It was great talking to him. And I think Roman, whether it be WFP or the games, however look at it, he's back to being a contender for the podium, if not a games champion right now, or for either one of those tour spots. And
it'll be fun to talk about later this week when we do the men's preview of he has done these two competitions, but he's clearly healthy again now. Where do you kind of assess him? Where do I kind of assess him against the men's field? But as far as Wodland goes, it was basically Roman from start to finish, Roman and then everybody else. And quite frankly, when you look at the caliber of athlete on the field, he should beat all of these guys, and he did.
Yeah, but that doesn't take anything away from what those other athletes did. And we talked about Moritz, man, that guy. I mean, if you haven't watched the interview, I was able to interview him after his amazing day too, and he said one of the things he said is pressure is privilege, and there is by far, I think, especially when it comes to these competitions, he hasn't shown it. He hasn't shown it at the games or larger or a caliber competition at caliber, which is basically the games, but every other like semifinal, like Dubai, anything like that, he's shown that he thrives under pressure. And he was under. It was just great seeing him, and I'm not surprised by the result at all. I know he had more in the tank. He even said he had more in the tank. But the most important thing I took away from him is how happy he was, and how much he fell in love. And we'll talk about this with some other athletes, specifically Elisa Fuliano. But him falling in love with the sport and the community again, and overall, just very impressed with our friend Moritz.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 60 athlete field, lots of experience and quality in this field. He had all 8th place finishes, but really it was first, 5th place on Saturday. Well, if you just look at the people just below him, there's these finishes outside of the top 10 for most of them. Except for Bronislaw, and Bronislaw had his outside the top 10 finishes to start the competition. And from that moment on Saturday, when he reeled off 115, he vaulted himself into that 2nd place position. We kind of looked at the workouts for the final day. We said, these might not be event wins, but I don't think there's anything here that's going to slow him down. He went fourth, and there was really nothing else for anyone to do at that point. Yona Koski gave it his best effort, but with another heavy lifting workout right at the end. Moritz is a big, strong dude, and it was just kind of I would say, really smooth execution. This is what we're accustomed to seeing from Moritz: 4 straight semifinals that he's made it through. And I just if you didn't see it at the end when he crossed the finish line after Isabel, he put the German way of counting for 4. And then he switched to the 1 pointing at the sky for, I think, for Lazar. And it was just the classic it was the classic Moritz finish, where he's very conscious of exactly what's going on at all points during the competition. And so he knew exactly that he'd made it for the 4th time, but he also remembered that this was that there's bigger things going on.
Yeah, it's I'm really happy for him. It's like, he talked about in the interview with you, like he took a different approach this time. He brought 3 of his friends, almost the Rich Froning circa 2012, 2013, where he surrounded himself with his friends that didn't and that's what he got Airbnb with the 3 guys he met. One's from Ukraine, one from, I think, Austria. Forgot where the other one was from, but they're just hanging out, just like boys being boys. And he's like, it was just so much fun. And they're there just being his hype man. And yeah, it was just really cool. I'm really excited. I hope he really grasps the game season, like he does well at the games. I know he's been kind of frustrated because it seems like things have happened, and he looked impressive. Good call, Brian, on test 3 to mayhem up. Everyone assumed that was Roman's to win, and what did he do? He goes out there and he just crushes it. I mean, he beat Roman. It says here by 8 seconds, but he had no issue. He could have won that by 20 seconds if he wanted to. He knew he had that in the bag, and it was just really cool. He was very calculating. He only had to do 2 lifts. He had 2 lifts in mind for the UMA complex. He finished his 2nd lift, still had 3 minutes left, and he just sat down and rested.
Yeah, and if you can really parallel that with I I have a ton of positive things to say actually with how he responded to this after the fact with Anil Akai on that workout. And Anil was not the only athlete who this happened to with this back-to-back part, but it was probably the perfect time to bring it up because he's probably the biggest name athlete that this happened to, and he's definitely an athlete who should feel like in any given competition he can compete with, sometimes beat, sometimes lose to Moritz. He has beaten him before. But look at Anil down there taking a 14th on the lift at 145 and then a 29th on the Nightmare right after that. And he missed 2 complexes on the last jerk at the same weight that would have not, vaulted him up the leaderboard on the lifting. But it's also just the time under tension, the stress on the body, the stress on the mind of not having that clean execution, and how it carried over into what I would say was a pretty clever workout with the dumbbell. There is actually quite a bit going on in there. It looks super simple on paper. This is a workout that most people could do in an affiliate anywhere around the world, which is great. 1 dumbbell in a box and a little bit of floor space for the lunges. But you saw I think the cumulative effect of the effort and the stress of not hitting those lifts and doing 4 or 5 times, taking the bar off the ground for an extended period of time, catch up with him in the second round of that triplet and the 3-round workout. And then you see the opposite with Moritz, where because he was able, like I would say, all things the same, Moritz and Anil are going to be very close on that workout. But Moritz takes a 5th, Anil takes a 29th, and that's game over. And we previewed this. I previewed it on the live stream several times. With a field like this, 60 athletes and a lot of guys that are pretty tight, there's a huge premium on execution. Someone actually caught this podcast on the very first event. Yonakoski got a no rep on a sandbag squat, and it cost him like 7 to 10 seconds. Even if it was just 7 seconds, that would have moved him up actually 7 spots on the leaderboard. It's 14 points. It wouldn't have mattered in the end, but it just that's those 14 points. Obviously, well, it did matter for him making some prize money. Every point counts. So that was I just thought it was a really good example of a very classy execution on the back-to-back by Moritz. And then we saw other athletes who didn't have that smooth run and the price that they paid for it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Like I said, I mean, the shot to the central nervous system, missing those heavy lifts on the complex. I mean, just putting your body under stress, and there's he just never really recovered from it, in my opinion. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tough one for Annual, but that's how he is. He's one of those guys who, he's going to go, he goes all out, and he doesn't do anything half-ass. And, it was a tough weekend. It wasn't a result he wanted, but he accepted that. I mean, I think afterwards he made sure after every heat, like those guys, that brotherhood they have there, it's still tight. He knows that and that's the thing, is like you have 2 spots up for grabs, but that these guys understand there's only 2 going, and they still are supporting each other. And it was good to see. It's unfortunate for Annual, but hopefully Annual will have some other opportunities. Like I said, he has this weekend. He also has WFP coming up as well. So we'll see.
It's a lot, and it's I think that it is good to follow up on what you said there.
Sorry. Yeah, he's doing WFP.
No, I was going to say it's good to follow up on that. Like, what's the motivation for competition, right? What do athletes come to a competition like this hoping to achieve? And the answer to that is going to be different for some of the athletes than others. Obviously, at the top of the list for most of them would be to earn some money, qualify to the games, get on the podium. Well, that's a very, very much at a premium at a competition like this. There was only 3 spots on the podium. There's only 2 spots at the games. There's only 3 spots that got prize money. So for every other athlete in the field, they have to find some kind of value in going out there and competing hard. I mean, you listen to Moritz say, like, I am very good at suffering. Like, even for someone who makes it look as easy as him, you have to go to that spot. I mean, they make it look ridiculously routine, but they're like, it hurts. It hurts them just as bad to do the workout in 5 minutes as it would for you to do it in 10 minutes. And for these guys that are in the middle of the field, whether they're, in the top 10, but they know they can't get on the podium, or they're 20th or 30th or 40th or 50th, to keep showing up event after event, day after day at a competition like this. That was, a lot of the athletes said it was a heavy competition. Like, there was a lot of weightlifting. It took the toll on the body. And so it's something worth considering, because someone was saying about the veterans, like, as the competition goes on, the veterans have they don't have that. They're not going to break. They're used to it. So,
let's hop back up to and talk about Yona. Not ideal for Yona. Like you said, he missed that one sandbag, and that might have ended up costing him. But at the end of the day, Moritz, still beat him by how many points?
51.
Like 50 points. So, at the end, I mean, yeah, it's kind of what ifs. I mean, obviously disappointing for Yona. He's going to have to try. He's got a tough couple weeks coming up for him. But overall, just what advice would you give Yona after this competition if you're his coach?
Well, first of all, just Nadine in here. Look, Yona qualified for the games when he was 20 years old in 2014. He made it in 14, 15, 16, 17. He missed by one spot in 18. He made it in 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. He missed it last year by a couple spots, and in kind of a really random set of circumstances. And in a very different format this year, he misses by one spot again. I would say this is a little bit of an unfair comment to make, because it is surprising. It's still only 3 times in 11 years that he hasn't made it through, or 12 years now that he hasn't made it through. And in every case, he's missed by 1 or 2 spots, basically. So he's always right on the verge of making it if he doesn't make it. And he makes it far more often than not. If I was Yona's coach this weekend, or really most of the athletes who are, in this top 10 list that didn't make it in the top 2, there's 2 things. First of all, you have to assess where your body's at. Whether it's training or competition, this is a lesson that, we have learned. We have heard other athletes talk about it. Putting a lot of stress on the body in competition on back-to-back weekends has the potential to have a big time residual effect. Doing it 3 weekends in a row is something that almost no athletes of this caliber have ever done in their careers. A semifinal, then a semifinal, and then a semifinal is basically what you're talking about, against increasingly more difficult competition. The online semifinal being more difficult than Wodland. There's fewer spots relative to the number of entries, and more of the best athletes in the world competing. And then at WFP, you have the best collection of athletes that ever existed for a 6 workout competition. So I would say you have to get real honest with where your body's at. You're committed via contract to compete in Indianapolis, and you have this online semifinal that you don't have to do coming up. Obviously, he wants to make it to the CrossFit Games, and he wants to put himself in that best position. But if he goes in at 80%, 90% for the semifinal and comes out at 70%, and then he goes into WFP at 70 or 80%, and he comes out at 60%, what's the rest of the year look like? And, what kind of risk chance of risk are you creating in terms of competing that many times in that short of a time domain? So I think that a lot, like, this is what I was talking about earlier. Athletes have to make these decisions, and it's not a very easy decision for them and their team to make.
Yeah. In 4th, Calvin Clements. I was, he's so just, for such a big guy, he's rather quiet. And I'm not just talking like himself. Even on the competition floor, and there's really nothing flashy about him, but he still had 4 top 5 finishes, 4th overall, tied with Yona. He had some good ones, he had some bad ones, and I think his worst finish was the opening in 16th, which isn't bad considering it was a run in the sandbag for a taller guy, not really known for running. But after that, 2nd, 5th, 11th, 4th, 10th, and then finishing with his 3rd in Heavy Isabel. This is the 2nd time you've been able to see Callum, in this type of setting. Your impressions?
I would say 3rd time. I would count Dubai as being a similar field to this, and a place that I got to see him. And yeah, between last year's semifinal, where he mostly came out of nowhere on the final day to kind of steal a spot from Colin Bossard and Luka Vuniak, pretty much, to Dubai, where he had a very resilient performance. I think he finished just outside of the money, but inside the top 10 there. And then obviously here, fighting to close the points gap and tie on fourth. I mean, look, he beat Braun, he beat Colin, he beat Anjol. At least those three guys, it's like very respectable. He tied Jonakowski, and you only lose to Moritz and Roman on a weekend like this. I think between the last three competitions we've seen, we need to start expecting performances like this from Callum. He's showing a good amount of versatility or well-roundedness in his overall fitness across those three competitions now, which makes me feel that there's not that many things that are going to show up that are going to keep him out of podium hunts in a field like this. There are, if he was competing in WFP, so I don't think that we're talking about a podium contender, maybe not even a top 10 contender, but he's moving in the right direction. The training culture team that he's working with had a great weekend there. And I think, Callum Clements, if you didn't know him before, is a name that you should definitely know. I see some people asking where he's won. He was born in the UK, or he's got origins from the UK, but he lives in Spain and has lived in Spain, I think, for most of his life. He may even have his parents are from the UK, but he might have been born in Valencia. So he has a little bit of a British accent, but he's, represents the Spanish flag at least on the competition leaderboards.
Is he still a training culture? I thought he was working with Fraser as well, but I could be wrong about that.
He's training culture, yeah.
Yeah, he is training coach. You're right. Okay, all right. Because Annual
we did, by the way, Lynn. We did do a little. I did interview him after one of the events. He's very man of few words, soft spoken, but you can, if you want to. I think it was. I can't remember which one, but I did talk to him.
Yeah.
It might have been at the end of the two-parter. If you want to look there, the end of the men's final heat for that.
And then in fifth was someone that I was really surprised with. And then when I kind of look back at the programming, not so much because of the time domains. But even then, Braun finishing fifth, one event win, no big surprise there. But I actually was really impressed with that 34th in the opening event. When he was with, I think he's with Training Culture now, but when he was with Underdogs, he was running a lot. And I think it takes a while for all that running to kind of like, to get better at running. But the 34th to 16th for day one, but then he comes back a 6, a third, a 6, a first. Now, granted, these are all time domains under like 9 minutes, and that's usually where he thrives at. And he was able to ride that out into a really solid finish at fifth, especially for a Masters athlete.
Yeah, he's past the 35-year-old mark, podiumed at the Masters Games last year. But we for the most part, everybody knows what Braun is good at and what he's bad at, and the bad stuff is getting better. The good stuff is still good enough for multiple top 3 finishes. And we talked about it in the preview show, like how bad that first event finish was likely going to be would keep him out of the top 2 or 3 contention. But because of the rest of the events, the way they were designed, we would see him surging up the leaderboard. I don't think I expected him to get quite this high, but I also will echo what you said, is the 34th was a pretty good finish relative to what he would typically have on a longer running event. But the sandbag squats are advantageous for him relative to the field, and he's been working on it, like you said, and some of that is starting to show in the competition results.
In your preview, you had him. You picked him for 12, so
yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
And I think probably like 2 or 3 of the guys ahead of that didn't compete, but either way, he was. If I had him 10th, he was twice as good as that. So.
Exactly. So, just great showing by Braun, whatever you're doing. Looks like the training culture stuff that I will do. I didn't listen to the broadcast for this, but I will give him some love. He was having fun out there with the complex, asking the crowd what he should go for. Picked up a 10-pound, picked up a change play. He's like, what? And he was having fun with it and doing some really cool stuff. I really like that. So it seemed like a lot of that.
I did a short interview with him after one of the workouts as well, and I asked him, because there was a couple other Polish guys in the field, about the state of fitness in Poland, and he was providing some insights on that too. So Braun, across the board, it's a pleasure to be around, a pleasure to watch him compete. He's got a great, like you said, camaraderie with the crowd. He knows how to kind of have fun but still get the work done, and I would say a great finish for him, 5th in this field.
Yeah, that takes us to Colin. it's really unfortunate for Colin because I think this is something. I mean, he's made some inroads. I mean, if we look at how he finished in Isabel, he actually finished 5th, which is really good. But at the end of the day, it's like this guy's going to get buried by some of these complexes and these one max lifts. Yeah, just like I mean,
Man, I gotta say, the 5th on Isabel, the 14th on the complex, like he's getting stronger.
Yes, he is. However, he doesn't look. He doesn't look. A lot of people will kind of compare him to not compare him, maybe just by height, but it's like he's not. He's a shorter athlete. He's a smaller. I'm trying to think who he kind of reminds me.
I would say he's more along the lines of Chris Spieler, just in a different generation, where like as much strength training as he does, he's never going to be in the top 5% of the field on pure strength tests. But the battery work, the 5th place on Isabel, if you watched that stream back, I was like, wow. So that was probably the most impressive thing for me on the weekend. It wasn't his best finish, but I was like, okay, because he's been working on the snatch a lot. He's gotten some pretty good complexes with snatching at like the 265, 275 mark that he's been, showing on social media. And then you can see that at high percentages of his 1 rep max compared to some of these guys that can snatch over 300 pounds, that he's able to stay in the fight and do 30 reps. So his fitness is elite, but the totality of what's required at this point in this sport to get to the highest level, it's going to take the right circumstances or kind of the perfect storm of workouts and athletes in a field and execution for him to get to the CrossFit Games. On the other side of that, Colin has been taking the chances where he has them. He's competed at IF3 the last 2 years. So he's gotten 2 world championships there. He's thrown himself in the ring for WFP this year. He qualified into the top division. So he's going to have a pro qualifier. Now he's actually going to get a chance to compete in the United States against the guys that he wants to compete at the games from other parts of the world besides Europe. And that will be another benchmark for him. I'll go there. He's going to have some good workouts. Like the first one should be a great workout for him if you're looking for a sleeper pick. I don't know if Heat One app or anything's doing those things, but we saw how fast he can run, ring muscle ups, and snatching, which we saw him just show his propensity at a moderate weight. This will be even lighter. So he's going to have some good events, and he's going to probably have some really bad ones against that field. The max jerk, the sled and echo bike on Monday night or on Saturday night, like that's going to be tough against that field. He's going to have low finishes. So he's going to see those highs and lows, but he's going to get a chance to assess himself against the best and go back to work with his team and say like, okay, where's the biggest bang for our buck in training in the next cycle to keep moving forward?
Yeah. It's going to be, he's still young. I think he's only 23, maybe might even be younger than that. But, we'll see what happens from the rest of the season. And, it's just one of those things where the wear and tear will affect him. I mean, he is a gymnast by heart, but we saw someone like Cody Anderson who kind of came in, but it turned
another great example. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. I was like Cody Anderson. Colin has a lot of Cody Anderson vibes. And now look at Cody Anderson. I mean, the guy's purely Olympic lifter. So I figured you like that one. I was kind of proud of that.
And Colin will, if he's not 24 yet, he'll be 24 by the time the games happen. Yes. So,
yeah. And kind of round out the top 10, Fabian Hermans. I know you haven't seen much of Fabian. I got to see him at the German Throwdown. He was in the podium picture the whole time through. I think he finished 3rd behind Moritz and Colin. He was either 3rd or 4th.
I think he was 4th, but he was also at the semifinals last year, but he finished 28th there. So you didn't necessarily get to see, usually the bottom half of the semifinal field doesn't get very much attention on a broadcast. And, it's just kind of like experience that they get to leverage. But I was definitely way too low on Hermans coming into this. And the other thing is that the semifinal last year, like there were no standout performances. Everything was basically in the same range. I think 18 to 30 basically on every event. And so, yeah, but what I saw this weekend is a guy who's, got some potential. He's 27, so he's kind of hitting that sweet spot of when we like to see athletes, getting in the mix. He was in the mix for a long time. I think he was in the top 10 for the whole competition, and continuing to gain that experience. He's got a chance to compete against a guy like Roman now, which is kind of a privilege for someone like that to do. And just like Colin, he can kind of go back, take a look at the weekend, and say, okay, we're moving in the right direction. And what's the next steps for us?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about 9. There's been a lot of talk about him, and I think the future's really bright for him. I don't know how old Sven is, but
Sven's a little older than these guys. Yeah, he's 33. Sven, if you've been watching us with the streams we've been doing in the last couple of years, has popped up occasionally. And Pixel Throwdown was probably the time that the one we streamed 2 Februarys ago was probably the time to see him. And then also at semifinals the last couple of years, 26th in Germany and then 19th last year in France. He's I would consider him to be one of the top 30 guys in Europe. But this was, again, a pretty good competition. He kind of was flirting with 10th in that 10th range the entire time. And like against this field, a top 10 finish is commendable. Like, everyone who's finished in the top 10 they may not be happy about where they finished in the top 10, but there's a lot worse ways that it could have gone. And I think, again, for a guy who's definitely like all of the competitors in Europe know who Sven Jeans is, and the coaches and the people who are on the competition circuit there. And even though we've streamed some events he's been a part of before, I'm sure that for many people, this is the first time in the United States, at least, that they're really getting to see him. And this is what we were talking about, is there are athletes like this that are the best in their gyms or the best in their communities or their countries. Sven's from Belgium. We did have a couple of Belgian athletes in the field, but not like him. And he's been the fittest man in Belgium the last couple of years and 3 times in his career. So that's the type of athletes that I really am grateful that people are getting to see, through this competition coverage.
Yeah. But by future, I meant, looking ahead, he did the Far East Throwdown qualifier, and that men's field is pretty wide open. And I think after what we saw this weekend, and if he does indeed make that trip to Busan, Korea, he has to be the favorite to win that games berth out of that region or out of that semifinal right now.
If you're doing a qualifying event after the online semifinals, do you have to do the online semifinals?
No, I don't think so. I don't think an online semifinal.
Yeah, because then, this is what I'm starting to think for some of these athletes. Maybe Sven's a great example. Like, why would you do the online semifinals?
Yeah, because you're not. I mean, sorry, Sven,
his best ever open finish is 37th. It's a huge difference finishing 37th and finishing 59th. His best ever worldwide quarterfinals is 52nd. It's a huge difference finishing 52nd and finishing inside the top 11. Maybe I misspoke just there for a second, but you guys get the idea. So if Sven his goal is to make it to the CrossFit Games, it is much more likely that he'll win the Far East Throwdown than he'll finish in the top 11 in the online semifinal. And so maybe they're having a conversation this week. Is that what we're going to do? Or, are we going to skip this, get ready for that, and give us one really good chance? Because he probably also has a chance at French Throwdown. So they have to be weighing these things. Where's my best bet to make it? And how many times do I want to compete? How many times can I compete at 33 years old in a short amount of time period at a level that's high enough to give myself a chance?
If I was advising, I'd say Far East Throwdown, and you have a month to get ready for it, and they're going to release workouts for it, so it gives you that whole month to be fresh and even try out some of those workouts, so that way you have a better idea. But looking at the Far East Throwdown, which we'll preview looking ahead, really the only one is Morteza, and Morteza, even if he wins, the likelihood of him getting a visa and coming to the United States is very slim. So even if Sven doesn't win and finishes second, he's going to get the backfill spot. So just something to think about. I guess wondering if that will be broadcast. I'm imagining you meant the Far East Throwdown, ironically fit. I believe so. That team usually does a broadcast. So, yeah. Halpin says none of them required. Wherever you qualify first is the only identifier. So Roman, Colton, etc. could do online if they place top 11. The spot would be back. So, and then finally, a guy that was a guest last week for us from Greece. A lot of you were introduced to him for the very first time. Is Anastas Artemis.
Mm.
It was great seeing him again live in person. 2 top 10 finishes, 10th overall. Um, the guy just came off a competition 2 weeks ago. Not bad. I mean, his day 2 outside of the Malaga was it? How did Malaga Nightmare? Um,
Yeah. He kind of he kind of hit the wall in the third round of that
yeah,
triplet or that 3 round complex with the single dumbbell. He went from being like in contention to win his heat. He was in the second heat after the first day, I think, because he had a slow start on day number 1, and then he didn't close the day as strong as he could have on day number 2. But he and Anyol, who I said I mentioned this about him, I think that the mindset that they showed through social media of staying in the fight. Anestis posted a Sparta video and talked about the Spartan mindset of like, staying in the battle until it's over. They both, I think, showed that. And you really can't ask for much more from a competitor. We know that it's very unlikely that athletes have competitions that go perfectly. There's setbacks, challenges, things that are perceived as unfair, mistakes that you make in your own game plan or execution of it. And how you respond to those is where character is built. And Anestis and Anyol did not have the weekends that they would have imagined, but they didn't let it deter them from going out there and competing hard. And then you see, even into the final, given everything they had right up to the final reps of Hezi. I would say overall that we could have seen Anyol and Anestis place higher up this leaderboard, but you have to respect the mental capacity to stay in the battle despite the setbacks early on.
yeah. That's kind of top 10. Any athletes you want to highlight in the other 10, 11 through 20?
Real quick, I'll just do a quick run through. Geraldo Holgersen, great to have him back in the competition scene after 3 years. Definitely, I think first time back, this encouraging performance. So I hope to see him again. Len Postel, he posted that this is the biggest competition field that he's gotten a chance to compete at. And again, like if you look at all of these guys in 11 through 20, I think this is again for those athletes. For those athletes, this is a great spot to be. You've beaten a ton of guys. You're trying to get closer to being in that top 10 group. Carlos Ferreira, same thing, out of Spain. He needs these kind of competitions experience. We expected the highs and lows. We got them, but the experience, I think, is super valuable. I didn't know how strong that kid, Antonios Makaronis from Greece was, but my goodness, he's super strong. Well, it was really impressive watching him on both the lifting complex and the final. It was great to see Dan Tai out there. Saf still posted that he's got some slip discs in his back and he's still out here doing this. I mean, the guy's got plenty of other things that he could be doing, but he still likes competing. And I think a very respectable finish, all things considered. Nicolas Bidon, everyone was looking to him after the Open with a great finish there. This is going to be an opportunity for him to make a big impact. He finished inside the top 20 and basically pulled out of one of the workouts. He got a 56th place finish on that, which is almost last because he was having a little lat thing. He, went through the protocols, practiced, warmed up the next day. He was, he needed to do 30 muscle ups and a heavy clean complex, some devil's press, and he got it all done. So we talked to him a little bit about it on the air as well. If you didn't check that, you can go look for it. So, and then just round out the top 20. I think I'll probably stop there. Yuri Morenchenko, I've seen him compete a bunch. I think this was one of the more complete executions that I've seen from him in a high level competition. He's sometimes a little banged up or he has some like kind of faults in execution, but again, to finish in the top 20 ahead of some really good guys. I can't stop there. I have to say something about this kid in 23rd. Someone wrote a comment about him in here as well, CJ.
Yeah.
I just went on a whim. I went and talked to him after the first event because he looked so impressive, and I've never seen this name before, that face before. His body is insane, and he looked great. Sandbag squats and running, like you don't just accidentally do well on that. You have to have something. So I'm like, where did this guy come from? So I talked to him, and he basically said, I was playing football. I saw some Rich Froning, Matt Fraser videos. I decided to give it a try. And a couple of years later, here I am. Like many athletes in this field, this is the first big competition they've done, the first exposure that they've had. He's from the United States, but he lives in Mallorca. the week before the competition, he said he went to C23 to buy some fit aids. And CJ saying, hopefully he'll go back and start working with John because, yeah, I mean, the high skill stuff got him. That's what I was looking at. This is the case. He reminded me of Nika Maizaradze last year. Like, okay, he's got the capacity, he's got some strength, he's got some stuff, but legless rope climb, handstand walking, what other gymnastics do they have? The deficit strict handstand push-ups for a bigger, longer, guy who probably didn't do a lot of that stuff in football. He's going to be able to move barbell, sandbag, he can run a burpees. Okay. So that's where he'll need to make some improvements. And hey, if you're in Mallorca and you have this kind of talent, yeah, I would definitely be hitting up John.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Adrian Munweiler is looking for a training partner. There's a bunch of guys there at C23, and I mean, obviously he has an affiliate there, but yeah, that's.
I spoke to Adrian at the end of the competition.
Yeah.
He came down there with Anais, and we spoke for a while. It was great it's been so long since I've seen him. It's great to see him. And Adrian's he's a thinker. I mean, I know some of you may have seen him on some stuff with Peter. But Adrian's a good dude. He has I think a very level head on his shoulders for assessing what's going on. He has this way about him of saying critical things in a constructive way.
Yes.
So it was great to catch up with him, and they said, "Hey man, Patrick came down. You got to come out to Mallorca. We got a guest room." So I might try to see if I can visit them at some point later this year.
Yeah, it was great. It was great seeing him. He came in on Saturday morning, flew in just to support. He had to get some training done on Friday. Guy still looks like he's chiseled from stone. He said he's not 100% ready to compete yet, but hopefully maybe here soon we can get him in a competition somewhere. But I actually think he's on with Peter right now. So that he's hot as hell too. Melanie agreed. He is one of the hot ones. He's a beefcake, and he's a great guy. He's a really cool guy. Like I said, very smart. I still need to get some of that Swiss chocolate. He keeps on talking about like Swiss chocolate. I got to send a shout out to Carl. He was in the comments last week during our previews. Kind of just, he's one of those guys, just real cool to talk to. You didn't have him in your top 40, but here he is, finished 28th. Hopefully you got a chance to talk to him and Len, but it was just really cool to see him out there having some fun. Normally a team guy. I don't know. I think he might just be individual this year. But yeah, shout out to him. There's somebody else. Where is? Yeah, you. I think you mentioned the podcast or in the stream. There were 4 athletes from Korea. That were competing. One of them is Changram Man. 33 finished 33rd out of CrossFit Marvel, which is that name may seem familiar. That team's been to the games quite a few times, coached by an amazing athlete there. And he's a former bronze medalist in judo at the Olympics.
To 2021.
Yeah, shout out to him. I actually have an interview with him I need to put up, so that remind me to do that. And Alexander Plushkin, and then just kind of down the list after that. So so that's kind of the men's field overall. It was it kind of finished like it did, like we expected it to, with Roman on top, and then 3 or 4 athletes kind of fighting for that second spot, and Moritz kind of separated himself with that day 2 and never really looked back. And I think the right 2 athletes made it.
Yeah, for this slate of workouts, absolutely. Those were the best 2 guys. They earned it, and congratulations to both of them.
Yeah, and we'll switch over to elite female. Well, it was kind of Lucy Campbell from. I mean, it's so weird because she wins by 24 points, but it felt like it wasn't that close.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Elisa came on strong after the game. Yeah.
No. Once we got back to the arena, she had a 16th on that first event. She was 7th or better with an event win and 3 top 3 finishes in the last 6 workouts. So, but I mean, looking at the top 2 here, Karen Frey obviously didn't compete. I thought that coming in this week, Karen Frey would have been the favorite, followed by Lucy. Without Karen in the field, I thought Lucy was the favorite. And I just want to talk about Lucy real quickly because 3 competitions that she's done now, I would say not necessarily progressively more difficult, because I think the Wadapalooza field was probably a little better than this one. But you win it. She wins in Marbella against just like a tier 3 competition field in Europe. Great. Winning at Wadapalooza, which we talked about, especially with those events that were there and the challenges with the muscle up, the handstand walking, the heavy clean, and coming back and then winning another competition, 3 for 3 in her return to live competitions. She did some Q&As on her Instagram today and basically said, the wrist is not 100%. Like, I have to warm up very specifically. And if you listen carefully, it's not just the wrist that she has to warm up. She's talking about the shoulder, the T-spine, of activating a lot of things so that she can get that wrist into a non-compromised position for things like handstand walking, which we had again, and for things like a heavy clean complex, which we had again. At Wadapalooza, again, the field was probably a little bit more difficult. She was in the 30s, 34th or 6th on the complex there, 20th on the one here. So, trending in the right direction. And just like in Wadapalooza, you actually saw, I don't know if it was the most emotion, but it was close to it after the clean complex, even though it was her worst finish. After that, everything was 4th or better. Oh no, until Isabel at the end, and again, a lot of like 30 snatches on the wrist. Like, it's a lot. So apart from the heavy weightlifting that's putting the stress on the lift, she looks like one of the best athletes in the world. And despite having those things pop up in the last 2 high level competitions, she's winning them. I think that it's really difficult to say right now that Lucy's, let's not consider Tia, because I don't know what she's doing, but I think she's one of the top 3 women in the world right now. I think at any event she goes up to, you have to look at her that way.
I mean, I can't really argue that based on her recent history. I mean, this history over the last, essentially it's been 6 months. She's won 3 competitions in 6 months and has done it in many different ways. So I can't really argue that, but right now, but I'm still just kind of still wait and see. Like she said, her wrist isn't 100%. Elisa did only finish, 24 points behind her. Elisa is a known commodity, someone that's been, top 15, top 20 in the games, which is, Lucy's only been in the games once and coming off 2 years of injury. And Elisa also, not really training for this event. Lisa's good. And not having Karen Frey there might have changed my opinion on things, especially if she would have beat Karen Frey, obviously. But I mean, you can only compete against the people that show up. And this was a very, very interesting women's field, competitive, and we'll get to how interesting it was, especially after each of the top 3, 4, 5, 6. The top 6 athletes, they all have a unique story that we sit there and talk about all day, which we have. We kind of essentially did that with the men. So, but yeah, Lucy, I don't argue. I think she's a top 5.
And I'm talking about, I'm curious to see how the games is this year and how it's structured, but she is signed for the WFP, and across, it just feels to me like across 21 events, she's got so many things that she's good at that, we've already seen on 6 and 5 event workouts or 7 and 5 event competitions that she can have a bomb an event and still win the competition. So, and now you're talking about adding in, okay, maybe she'll have 2 workouts that she's going to have low finishes on across these 21 or 3, but you're going to add in swimming, you're going to add in running, you're going to add in biking, more odd object work. And it just feels like she's very, very well-rounded in her fitness. And what she said is she has a coach that almost no one knows. She describes him as a very good coach, and she describes herself as an athlete as being very good at doing what she's told. If a good coach has an athlete that's good at following instructions in competition, that's a dangerous recipe. And she also talks about having a background of fitness and that's advantageous. She feels is advantageous compared to many of her peers or competitors. So yeah, there's a lot to like. And also Patrick and I were talking about this. She feels super relatable. Mm-hmm. She's just like a pretty normal person. She's good at articulating herself. She has emotions. You can see them. She's kind of like we were talking about with Moritz, where, you can she can be in the midst of competition, but she's still got, like, it doesn't feel like she's detached from what's happening. So she's super relatable also. So I'm hopeful that the wrist is healthy enough and that she is got a process for managing that we'll continue to get to see her competing for a long time, because just like I said about Roman, like having Lucy in any competition elevates the quality of the competition in terms of the caliber of athlete and the caliber of person that's representing the, you know, the highest group of athletes in our space.
Well, if you think about it, she only has one competition to do next week, and then she has up until August to build up more strength in that wrist. So, yeah, and we've already seen, like, some of these women, like, I mean, you look at someone like Luisa Marquez and Kentaro. I mean, I mean, Luisa's really good, obviously, to Isabel in certain lifts, but I mean, you know, she's not going to finish last in lifts at the games if there's something
Right.
like that. You know,
Right.
so it's just managing, especially with a field of 30 athletes, and probably no cuts this year. So, yeah. All right, let's move on to Lisa. This is something we kind of talked about, and even, I mean, we talked about this before. I mean, and this still might happen. We talked about, like, there's a chance that the top two finishers wouldn't go to the games because they didn't do the Open, and Karen Freyova and Elisa Fuliano. Elisa finishes second. I mean, obviously Freyova wasn't there, but I mean, that still could have possibly happened. So because of that, Elisa not doing the Open, you know, she still finishes second, still gets the prize money, but just doesn't go to the games, which she's fine with. I had an interview with her that I'll post later on regarding, like, she's taking a year off. She's not making a stand. She's not making a stand. If she was making a stand, she'd be doing the WFP. Had nothing to do with that. She just wanted to take a break, mentally, physically, emotionally. She just needed to do that, and just find the love again. And it was great talking to her because, and I know you had a couple conversations too, that she's loves the game, and kind of answer Mike's question. And I know Sevon's brought it up too. I bet you they're regretting their Open now. I don't think so. I don't think Elisa regrets it at all. Because, one, I don't think she was ready to do the Open, for one. She was barely ready to do this semifinal, but she did it. She signed up for it and just kind of prepared for it. You know, there's a lot of pressure for these athletes. So her only pressure was showing up, doing a competition, turning around, just like an average person might. Like you showing up to you showing up to Crash Crucible and just competing and not having to worry about a season. I think Elisa doesn't regret it at all.
Yeah, spoke to her at one point during the weekend, or maybe it's after the final, actually. And she, you know, I think there was a fleeting moment where she said, like, maybe, you know, maybe I should have done it. But I think she immediately corrected herself on that. And the general concept of what she was communicating was this freedom of just competing to compete and not feeling the pressure, not feeling the stress. And, you know, she's right in the middle of her career, basically 27, 28 years old. And I think that it's probably the really critical lesson for people to learn is when you're that good in this sport, top 50 in the world, we'll call it. The physical, mental, and emotional toll that it takes to complete at the highest level, not everyone can do it every year, and not everyone can do it multiple times a year. There's a cap, there's a limit, and taking a decision that's going to put yourself in a period of your career, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever, where you can train and compete in the way that's going to allow you to feel good about what you're doing, is it's not, there's no one recipe for that. And it's also very difficult to separate out what you know to be the right decision for you from what other people are trying to tell you is the right thing for you. And I have a ton of respect for the athlete who's able to do that, because the noise can be very noisy. And at the end of the day, whether, we're all of us as humans, like this is what we have to try to figure out. Can I block out the noise and do what I believe is the right thing for me with the people that I know, love, and respect and want the best for me? I think Elise has made that decision this year. I think she's very comfortable with that decision this year. I think it was clear in the interview that I did with her and that Patrick's done with her that you guys will see. And I would really hope that there's not people that are trying to make her feel bad about that, because that's missing, I think, the big picture of what is really kind of important for the athletes.
And sorry, Mike said he doesn't. I mean, again, it probably not going to change his mind on this, but these athletes, Colton, Jason, any of these athletes could have half-assed the Open, but that's not what makes them athletes. They don't half-ass anything. That argument can embed anyone could have half-assed that Open. That's not, if you knew Elisa, Lisa's not known for doing anything half-assed, and it's just she just didn't want to do it.
Yeah, this perspective, it really depends on what the motivation of a comment like this is. Is it a comment that's trying to say like, the game season is the most important thing, and she should have done it because she's now taken away the best opportunity for herself? That might be your perspective, but it's not necessarily hers. And Patrick's right. These athletes really struggle with showing up and not doing their best, and they don't like that. So I think, but I don't think it's a bad. I don't think it's a bad question. I think it can be a great question to contextualize. But it goes back to how we opened the show, which is for the first time this year, it's not obvious to the athletes what the path is. The game season path is more convoluted than it's been in recent years. There's another thing that's available. There was a huge tragedy last year. There's tons of opportunities to compete, and the choice is not, like, it's not as obvious as it once was. And it doesn't mean that because someone chose this or is choosing that it's a good or a bad choice. It's their responsibility to find out what makes sense for me. I think Elise has done that this year, and I think most athletes have done that this year.
Well, let's talk about probably the woman of the hour. We kind of saw this like kind of unfolding like halfway through day 2. Sung Young Choi, with all the, and I know everyone's going to give me a lot of shit. Not a lot of shit. I'm not going to be that guy to say I told you so, because I'm not. But I've been advocating for like the women in Asia for a while, and some people may argue that the field wasn't that impressive, but at the end of the day, most of these women the argument would be they would go to Asia and win. Well, Sung Young Choi comes here, has a great performance, and goes to the games in a very unconventional way that you wouldn't expect her to. And this her coming to Europe, like you interviewed her, it was to kind of see where she tests. And we talked about this in the preview. She very rarely does this. Outside of competitions in Korea and semifinals, she doesn't test herself very much. I mean, I've always made the argument, like, how come she's not competing in Dubai? Like, Dubai would be like the perfect field for her to compete in. And maybe this might be this might help her do that. But she finishes third, the healthiest I've seen her in 3 years, and she looks great. Your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, having not gone to any of the Asia semifinals and seen her work out there, and at the games, it's similar to what I was saying with Fabian Hermans at the semifinals. Like, when you're finishing 20th through 40th at the games, it's really difficult to get a really good picture of an athlete because there's so much talent. There's so many things happening that weekend. So unless you're specifically watching for her, she's going to get kind of lost in the shuffle. She's not winning events at the games, so she's not stealing spotlights. We talked about it a couple of years ago. Like, Dallin Pepper took 5th at the games, won the final, and I don't remember seeing him ever until the final. And now you're talking about a person who's finishing in the low 20s at the games, and how much less you're going to get to see them there. But she and Saher have kind of been pushing the level of female athletes in Asia up and up and up, having the best finishes in the last couple of years that any women from Asia have ever had. And she mentioned in that brief interview that I did with her on the broadcast that this was the first competition she's done in Europe, the first opportunity to test herself against some of these athletes. She's a little bit behind Elisa and Lucy, but she's beaten several talented women in this field. I think that she, besides getting the games invite, she also got the experience and the kind of litmus test that she wanted against top athletes from a different part of the world. I know that that's a difficult thing for people to do because you have to find the resources, the means to get there, the opportunities, and be selective about that. But when you have the chance to do it, I really encourage athletes to do that because one competition like this, where you go to a different part of the world and do it, not only the culture experience, but the competition, the value of the competition. I think there's just a tremendous amount of positives when you can find that chance. The fact that she also was able to come with other athletes from South Korea, like at the award ceremony, they were out there, celebrating with her. So it was very cool to have the South Koreans there. Very impressed with Sung Young Choi. Super, super strong, very fit. I think it was very similar to Elisa, just a little bit worse. She had the 25th in the opener, and then all other top 10s besides the Wildland Chipper when she got into the arena, 1 first, 2 thirds. So yeah, super impressed with Sung Young Choi.
Yeah, and it was just really cool to see her. Like I've been able to see her live numerous times, and this is like the best version I've seen of her since her rookie year at the games. And this is the healthiest version of her I've seen. So, this is good for her. Yeah. And speaking of another impressive performance, Taylor Howe at 4th. This is probably the most impressive performance I've seen Taylor. And this is someone that, obviously does really good in online qualifiers. And then she shows up for these events. And, one way or the other, she just doesn't end up doing very well. I mean, Rogue Invitationals past year. I don't know. Is she turning the corner and realizing her potential, because a 4th place finish in this field, even with some of the athletes missing? I'm really excited about it for her.
Yeah, she kind of popped up on the radar in the early 2000s, the early quarterfinals years, semifinals years, and then she kind of fell off. She had that 8th at Strength and Depth, got into the last chance qualifier. Then the next year was 20th. The next year she didn't make the semifinals, and hasn't had really good competition performances at a similar level in the time since then until this weekend. I saw her after the final event and mentioned to her how great it was to see her, the best live performance that I've seen from her in a few years. She just kind of smiled and said thank you, but not super talkative. But I think a lot of athletes in the just behind her on this leaderboard who we have been seeing compete more and more frequently on the circuit, getting that competition experience that I had thought would do better than her here. It was pretty refreshing to see this version of Taylor again.
Yeah, and I think she was refreshed by it too. She just looked happy and free out there. And we mentioned kind of that UK contingent. She's kind of like, she's been around for a little bit longer than Jennifer Muir and Ella Wilkinson, some of the other athletes we talked to. But she, it was very impressive. And who knows, a performance like this might lead to bigger and better things and help her with her confidence. Speaking of confidence and talking about young athletes, let's talk about the 18-year-old from Reykjavik.
17.
Well, it should be 18 this season.
Unbelievable, dude. I mean, similar to Taylor, I didn't see a top 5 coming against this field for Burgos. I thought she might win the lifting complex. I know she's fit. She has been, gaining the competition experience, but I don't remember where I picked her to finish, but I feel like a 10th I would have been like, dang, that was really impressive. A 5th is eye-catching. So yeah, and again, I'm pretty sure she started the weekend with she was like bronze, 35th, 29th, and then climbs all the way back up to 5th.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm just this was exceeding what I thought was possible for her this weekend, and it's pretty cool.
Is she the European version of Olivia Kerstetter? I mean, obviously there's a lot of comparisons, a lot of, teenage athletes, I mean, there's a lot of things there, but does she have that type of potential?
I think it's a very fair question. I mean, just to get I don't know if you just pulled up her performances, but she wins the complex. You could see Olivia doing that. Second on heavy Isabel, you could see her doing that. 35th on a run, but that doesn't sound that out of the norm. 29th on a legless rope climb, doesn't sound that out of the norm. Pretty fit besides that. Yeah, I would say that's a very fair comparison.
Yeah, so definitely someone to look forward to. I mean, she seemed like she belonged, and it looked like a lot of these athletes. You have Elisa, some of these athletes that have been around, veterans, and they kind of embraced her. And I think it's cool. Like the more competitions we used to talk about this with like Lucy McGonigal, Emma Lawson, some of these young teenage athletes that they kind of broke through. I mean, I remember Emma Lawson's first big competition at Dubai, with the elites, and this is kind of one. She's done some, but this is kind of the one where she kind of separated herself and kind of stood alone. So. And you mentioned she was there with kind of an Icelandic contingent there, kind of younger Icelandic athletes. Maybe the next batch of great Icelandic athletes, and I think she's kind of spearheading that new movement. And now we get 6, the pride and joy of Estonia. Really good start from her, and then kind of faded there towards the end.
Yeah. Andra is a contender in all of the sort of longer distance running things. The conditioning is elite. You see her start with a 3rd and a 1st. The lifting is going to be a little setback. And I think if you look at like the UMA Complex Malaga Nightmare combo, you can see that 31st on the lift, lightweight cycling for reps 3rd. So that's kind of what you'd expect. The Heavy Isabel 25th, like not super surprising. So she's working on getting strong, but she has a very, very high level of fitness at the aerobic level. So I think this was probably, I feel like, again, I can't remember where I picked, but I feel like this was expected sort of finish for her. 6 to 10 range, a pretty good weekend, a pretty good showing, some top finishes, some bottom finishes. So
you had her at 13th.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so you weren't too far off. And you were actually spot on.
No, spot on with what?
I mean, you're spot on in some of these other athletes we'll talk about here in a second. Margot Massette kind of overcame a really tough start to test day 2 and finished up pretty solid.
Yeah, that was a crazy day for her. So she had a great start to the competition, and then I don't even know what happened. I heard she got a few no reps on bar muscle ups from maybe pushing out and not showing control on top of the bar. I'm not really sure. We've seen Margot compete a bunch. A 53rd on that doesn't make any sense. Like that's not reflective of her fitness. I've done, so. And then you talk about mentally, what does that do to an athlete? She came back out that evening. She's, I would say, not the most orthodox lifter. Like it doesn't maybe look the prettiest, but she has so much grit and determination. And she missed this lift, and then she got it the second time. And I think it was like the necessary turning point for her to get back on track. If she had missed that again, I think that she would have just completely shut it down. Yeah. But still, it took the toll a little bit. So she got the 3rd and the 21st to close out the day. But it was a great rebound from there. And then she finished out with a solid final day. So all in all, I would say that 53rd was a total off of the radar. Like for her, unless there's something that I don't know, that's something that you just got to throw out the window as like an outlier and look at the rest of this stuff and say, I'm moving in the right direction. I'm getting closer to the level I want to be. And I would count this as a successful weekend on more ways than one for Margot.
Yeah. You actually picked her 14th, so she finished 7th. So, and then probably the surprise, when the maybe disappointing surprises, Linda Kiesman at 8th. It's just weird kind of seeing her. It's like, we saw like the best version of her maybe at semifinals last year, but then she's done a couple live competitions since then and hasn't really performed to what we're used to seeing or expect from her. I don't know. I mean, do you have the same sentiments?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's difficult to get to a certain level, and it's difficult to sustain it. And Linda, actually, she had such a great post today because she's still stuck down there. Not a great start on the running workout, and then the chipper also got her with the handstand push-ups. I think she did what we expected with the barbells, 4th and 4th on those. Had some other good finishes, but I think probably for Linda, the workouts, the field, I don't think the consistency is there. So I don't really feel like I have a great read on what she's going to do at every competition right now. I think we can expect some good and some bad at most of them, with there being more good than bad. but I think she's still working on some stuff, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Someone asked earlier if she can qualify for the games this year. There's just so many random variables in that. I don't know. Semifinals, I would say online, no. French Throwdown should be the last chance for her to do that, I think. And I'm not sure what the field's going to look like there, but Linda Keishman, I would say, like many of these women, is sort of with only 30 women going to the games, like, fringed on the outside looking in of being at that level right now.
Yeah. And at 9 is someone you got it right. You picked her exactly at 9, which is, that's impressive. What an impressive performance by her to kind of end the
Oh, we
week.
should also qualify some of this. I mean, Karen
Yeah.
didn't compete. Andrea dropped out. Ella didn't compete. Emily Loomberg dropped out. Sarah Sigmundsdottir dropped out. So 5 of the top 10 didn't finish the weekend. So some of those that are finished that I had ranked 11 through 15, if you bump them up 5 spots, suddenly they're very close to where they would have ended up being. Vesh Lemoy, by the same token, I would have had her a little bit higher than that. But so, you're maybe giving me not enough credit on some of the others and too much credit on this one. But either way, I spoke to Vesh Lemoy at the check-in, and I asked her, because she's like, I saw you where you put me. And I said, well, what do you think about that? She goes, yeah, I don't really know, but I'm hoping to be in the top 10.
Yeah. I mean, we knew that she was going to be one of the best lifters there. And she performed in the Wodland chipper, and the final day Wodland chipper. I was expecting a little bit more. However, in heavy Isabel, I was hoping that to be more of a top 10 finish. But overall, kind of consistent across. Not the greatest runner, and when it comes to Krieger athletes, they're known for capacity, but she's getting better. 22nd on that run, 26 on the separator. She did better than some athletes that we thought would do really well in this separator. So I think for her, like we've seen her dip into, know more to be a team athlete, just like the next person we're going to talk to. She is rather impressive, I thought. And I think she's trending in the right direction, especially as one of the stronger Krieger athletes out there who aren't really known for their strength.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's worth mentioning with Vesh Lemoy is her 3 worst finishes were her 3 first finishes or workouts of the weekend. So I would say another strong takeaway for her is that she's able to show resiliency through competition of, having a slow start and having a strong finish is, I would say, usually, and sometimes it's workout dependent, but it's usually a good sign for an athlete. A slow start, a fast start and a slow finish, we see this all the time. A slow start and a fast and a faster, strong finish catches my eye a little bit more. And like Patrick said, she's not a complete stranger to individual competition. She's done some individual competitions in the UAE and also at IF3s a couple years ago. So she's kind of, weaving in between, but on the biggest stages, it's usually been team at the games. So fun to have her in this competition. I think a nice finish of the last 4 workouts, that she should be leaving feeling with her head high and some stuff to still work on.
Speaking of team athletes from Norway, being a high division, Varthorm and Mo, what a start by her. She was, just basically one event, taking a dead last and kind of just, kind of spiraled after that.
I don't think it was a spiral.
Yeah,
I was watching her very closely on that last day.
Yeah.
She
knew. I was able to talk to her about it. It was not a spiral. It's not like mentally she just fell apart. She knew what her strengths and weaknesses were. And, that last place, she knew that she was going to struggle on those handstand push-ups. That's why she went out hot, kind of throw a little pressure on Lucy, and was trying to manage it. And bravo on her to actually, like, those went away really quick for her. Like, handstand push-ups, kind of like legless rope climbs. When they go away, they're usually gone. But she was able to finish those. And then you saw her just going all out to try to finish that workout. And she got really close, actually, between, it was just really impressive. And, she's someone that's going individual this year. And it's been very impressive through the Open, through this, the WFP qualifiers. We get to see her again next week at the WFP events, but a first, an 18th, a second, a 20th, a 6th, and then a 53rd and 24th.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you watched closely, you saw when she finished the last handstand push-up, she was excited about it. And
Hmm.
you could have a totally different mindset of being embarrassed because everyone else is done and you're just finishing that. And absolutely, it's a huge hole, but she knows
Yeah.
it. And she
Yeah.
she probably, it looked to me like she achieved the goal, which was get through it.
Yep.
Then to go and do what she did, the thrusters unbroken, 30-calorie row in like a minute 10 seconds, and just sell out on the GHDs until the buzzer hit with the, everyone obviously watching her there. Again, you could be embarrassed, and she wasn't. She was tenacious. It was a funny moment at the last when the buzzer hit. She just fell all the way back on the GHD, and Leah just like picked her up,
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
"Hey, let's not rest in that position."
Yeah.
But same thing at the final when she finished the last rep and she stepped over the bar. She was happy, and it wasn't a good finish for her on the leaderboard, but it was
Yeah.
a good finish for her in her head. And
Yeah.
that is like I said with Vegemite, that's a good sign. And that also, it's not just the athlete, it's the environment. It's Krieger,
Yeah.
it's Seaman, it's Ben Hameen, who was there coaching this weekend. And he's an
Yeah.
athlete from their team BLST last year. It's this framing the approach to a workout based on what you know about an athlete so that they can go out there and do their thing and have a realistic feeling about it afterwards. That means if it goes poorly, they know it. And we've seen Vor go out there and do things like the 20-minute watt test, where she
Yeah.
didn't execute and she was pissed about it. And it was still a good finish relative to the field, but it wasn't a good finish for her. And then
Yeah.
we see things here where it's a bad finish compared to the field, but it was a good result for her, and she felt good about that. So I really appreciated seeing that from her, and I think that it is a tribute to an environment that sets up athletes up for that.
Yeah, and you definitely saw that. Like I talked to her afterwards in the back, and everyone was kind of they weren't one of these like patting, like, oh, it's okay, you'll be fine. No, they're just like, it's over. And she was like, she was smiling. She was like, just she has a very infectious smile and demeanor, and I think it really helped out a lot of those athletes. Um, Kind of like what we did with the men. 11 through 20. I mean, I guess you can quickly go through them. Julia Jacobson from Germany. I was impressed with her. I've seen her a couple times. Once at German Throwdown, saw her IF3. She's we're kind of waiting for that next German. I mean, outside of I'm trying to remember her name. She competed here. Um, just a German athlete to kind of break through in CrossFit on the women's side, on the female side. And Julia right now seems to be kind of leading that new charge. But I'm saying there are some Germans on their way. We'll see
There were
one or two.
there were two other German women in the field. Lydia didn't Bartoszewicz didn't take the floor for the final, and Christina Peterson, who was one of the athletes I spoke to in the
Mhm.
early part of the competition. This was her first big stage. They were lower down on the leaderboard, but they're starting to get that success. But yeah, Julia was impressive. I mean, I think she was in the top 10 most of the weekend, and she's still finished ahead of a bunch of names that you guys probably recognize. She's one of the taller athletes, but nothing too flashy, but pretty good overall. She definitely got my attention.
Yeah, I was really impressed by the Uma complex. She did something. It was something. She's really good at complexes because that was what I saw her do really well at IF3 as well. On the 12, another Norwegian, kind of taking the uh, I don't know, kind of following the whole Jacqueline Dahlstrom, who we got to see there as she was helping John Singleton coach quite a few of their athletes. Norwegian that lives in
Majorca.
Mallorca and working out C23, finishing 12th.
Yeah, I mean, just the Norwegians in general, 9, 10, 12, 14.
Yeah,
Sinna is she seemed really happy with most things this weekend, and I think she's continuing to sort of find her way and learn about herself in competition. So she's doing a few more, but I think it was a very respectable performance for Sinna, and I'm curious to see what she chooses to do going forward. Jen Muir, yeah, I think I saw a comment in here a little while ago. Maybe not as good as we expected there. She did tail off towards the end of the competition. The last day was not great with the handstand push-ups and the heavy Isabel. Um, So I think I have feelings similarly to Jen about as I did with Linda Keishman, that pretty good, maybe just like one rung down on the ladder from her, but not exactly sure what we're going to get competition from competition. I think she might benefit from doing a couple more competitions. I don't say that too often, but I don't know how often Jen is competing right now. And I think that if she can get a couple competitions in, it doesn't have to be the biggest ones for someone like this. Go to Basque Chapelqueta, Fall Series Throwdown, Turco Tumio Paiva style events. They're all over Europe. You can find a ton of these, Belgrade Games, whatever. When we pull up her results, like I see a 19th at Wadapalooza, and I don't have a lot of other out of CrossFit Games season competition results for her. I think she might be at the point now where doing some of those against some different groups of athletes with some different programming. She's 25. Like, I think she can take a year and do that, and learn potentially a lot from that you can't learn in the gym.
We talked about night and day, Leah. One, it was great seeing her. I've known her for a while. Just a bundle of joy here. But she's been dealing with injuries for the last 2 years, especially at such a young age. I think 20 years old. A 6th, a 47th, a 5th, a 43rd, a 2nd, a 6th, a 40th. Obviously she has some holes in her strength, but she doesn't see them. She's happy with what she did at UMA and heavy as well. So,
and she wasn't happy with the 5th place on event 3.
No, she was not at all. Not at all. But yeah, not at all, actually. Yeah. She was able to win her heat, but again, overall,
she's got high expectations for herself. She's one of these. She has a innate mindset of like, I'm never satisfied. I always compete hard, and the strength isn't there, but the fitness is incredible.
Yeah, she's a carbon copy of Andrea Silberg. And I was talking to Andre because everyone says that's her little sister, but she's also an athlete who I think Andrea said is like, at her age, she's way beyond her. Like, she's learning how to eat, and she's getting bigger, she's getting stronger. And again, she's recovering from, a knee injury that put her on the shelf for the longest time. But I'm more interested. I'm excited to see her do more competition. She's going to be a French Throwdown, and just I want people to see her display her talents, especially when it comes to handstand walking, because I think she's one of those athletes. When you put her on a big stage where she gets to do the handstand walking, it's gonna go nuts. Kind of like how Victor Hoffer is and Danielle Brandon. When it comes to those events, it gets people on their feet and get them excited. And I think she can get on these stages and do something like that. She can make a name for herself. Moving down to 15th, Madeline Person. Pretty solid finish by her. And she's someone that's been around the European scene for a while.
She's been. She's coming. She's trying to get back to where she was a couple years ago, and she's working on it. She with Henrik there up in Sweden. I always struggle to say their affiliate's name, but they got a great community there. She's a wonderful person. She does compete a lot, but I think still not back to the optimal version of herself, but getting there. The person behind her was the Chris Chambers on the men's side for me, Steinan Svansdottir. I met her with the Icelandic crew at the check-in, as I mentioned, and if you're just talking about the top 20, she's the one person I didn't know before this competition, and she was in the top 20 pretty much throughout the entire thing. Young girl from Iceland that the next time we'll get to see her compete, but she was 0% on my radar for this, and a very respectable place to be on a leaderboard when you think about some of the other women we're talking about right now.
Trying to see if I can find anything on her. Not much on her even online, so or social media wise. So
when we pulled her data, we have no record in Apollo database of her doing any competitions outside of the CrossFit Games season. So this is a super raw athlete in terms of competitions that we have exposure to or information of on her. And it was a great great first bench or first dot on the radar.
Next athlete is an athlete that we got to know pretty well, actually, through Nick Fowler. Is Diana Pinchuk. Lives in Ukraine, coaches, I think, like 8 classes a day there in Kiev.
Kiev.
And Kiev. And yeah, just, started off very strong, and still a top 20 finish. You got to see her compete at Dubai, and a 7th in the separator, which is that's impressive. 13th to 20th to 20th, 26th and heavy as a bell, a 32nd in the Wodland chipper. She just doesn't get a lot of time to train because she just doesn't have time to train because she's coaching, and she's scheduled for French Throwdown. She had an invite to the Asia, that Far East Throwdown. Initially declined it, but I think she's trying to gain that spot back, knowing that, hell, it's kind of, it's one spot, but there's quite a few athletes that aren't doing it that did the online qualifier, but she has a good chance of maybe earning that game. But yeah, initially you've already seen her once, but seeing her the second time around, your thoughts?
I thought she improved from Dubai. I think she's maybe gained some competition experience there, and also a little bit more time working with Nick. I think very easy. I mean, people can understand that the circumstances for her to compete are very difficult right now. But then the knowing what we know about the coaching and the time that's at a premium, in addition to the travel, I mean, it's the closest airport that she can fly out of is in Warsaw, Poland. And that is, let me change this since Patrick dropped out, so it's not just in the corner. And it's like a 14-hour train ride, I think, to get there for her. And that's just if she wants to go to a competition. So the logistics, the finances, the circumstances for her to even compete in something like this are very different and more challenging than many of the other women. I don't have the leaderboard pulled up on this computer. We'll see if PC comes back, or maybe I should find it. I don't know. But anyway, we haven't seen an athlete, especially a female one, come out of the Ukraine and compete like this for a while. So it was cool to see her again. I wanted to get an interview with her on the broadcast with her translator that was there, but her translator was also competing in one of the community divisions. But Patrick did. I gave her the mic to say something in Ukrainian to the people back in Kiev, but Patrick got an interview with her that I think he's going to put up on Instagram at some point. So hopefully you guys can get a chance to hear a little bit more from her. You good?
I don't know what to happen. Maybe the power outage is working its way east. After Pinchuk, sorry, let me pull that up.
Oh. Gosh, man, there's so many good women that are even in this part of the leaderboard. Jasmine Ghilardi out of Italy. There's a bunch of Italian women there. I was impressed with her again. Connie Easby, young woman out of the UK, got some great positive messages from her family who was watching back home. They were super proud of her. Lisa Laiko down there in 22, one of the women that we've seen keep competing out of Finland. Maria Granizo, we spoke about her coming into the competition, and one of the younger athletes. She's represents Switzerland on here. I think she lives in Spain though. She's super talented and very young. Yeah, just a fun competition. I think a lot of new blood, some older athletes. Suri Helgadottir down there in 31st, but and also on the women's side, we had a couple of women from South America, which I thought was really cool. Amanda Fusama and Danae Migliori, who she got third on the lifting complex. Very strong athlete, finishing in the mid 30s. Yeah, I mean, it was cool. There's 3 South American countries represented, athletes from the US, athletes from Canada, athletes from South Korea, 1 male athlete from Australia, and 1 female athlete from Morocco. So you had every continent, so many different countries. It was okay. Ilya, I love the lesson, but We need phonetics there. It looks. I would read those the same. Anyway, yeah. So I thought the makeup of the field was awesome, and I thought it was a cool style of competition to have, to give a lot of athletes sort of this exposure and this chance to compete against athletes that they'd like to be like at some point in their career. And not all of them will get there, but very cool that they had the chance to take the floor against athletes like we talked about at the top of the leaderboard.
Look at that smooth transition, huh?
Oh yeah.
Was it the only competition going on? I mean, it's just, I know it's semifinal season, but there's still other competitions going on across the world, including in Istanbul, Turkey. So,
yeah, Eurasia Throwdown. I got a chance to stream this competition last year and meet the organizer, Erhan, Orchan, were the two primary guys that helped out getting me there. And Nika Maizaradze was an athlete who popped onto my radar at that competition last year, representing the Republic of Georgia. He went on to qualify 4th in Europe for the semifinals last year, where he finished in the mid-20s, making a few mistakes. I don't know what he's doing this year. I don't know how often we'll see him compete, or if and where we'll see him compete. Similarly to what I was talking about with Diana, is that he's got like the economical situation, the resource challenges of getting from some of these countries and having these opportunities to compete is different than what people in the Western world or Australia or even possibly in parts of South America are used to. So, but he went there, had a good battle. Jan was right with him. Jan Arndt, he posted a picture before that competition that was just like ridiculous. It looked like he was getting ready to compete at the bodybuilding competition at the Arnold's, but yeah, they had a really good battle back and forth. You were talking about guys from Germany earlier, and I kind of thought it was cool that Jan went here. He maybe could have tried to go to Wodland instead, but to go to a different part of the world and compete in they put on a full production broadcast there in Turkish for the athletes of all the divisions, which not many places do. So I know most of these names won't look familiar to you, but most of the guys on here I actually have gotten a chance to meet previously. Isak Petraidis is like, I just love this guy's he trains in the gravel driveway outside of his house in like rural Greece. So it's just cool to have known some of these guys. And on the women's side, I think someone actually mentioned in the chat earlier today, I think they wrote Far East Throwdown, but they meant to say Eurasia Throwdown. Syria Meha continuing to make the rounds, continuing to rack up prize money and podiums and competition wins. There's always these women from Russia that just kind of pop in and out of competition that are fairly competitive. In this case, it was Svetlana Veselova, and she's been in semifinals in Asia and win like the fittest in Russia once or twice in the past. So they're competing in Russia all the time, but they don't always travel to compete. So here she is, and she got a tiebreaker second place over Marika Sepala, who we've seen compete several times. Pixel Showdown 2024 being the first one that I saw her at. She actually podiumed at I think she got second or third at the Athens Throwdown as well. Another woman from Iceland there who we've seen compete once or twice before. Yeah, Eva Iona Rampazzi, she's a fitness model in Greece, but also she competed at Athens Throwdown as well. So just wanted to acknowledge that this competition's going on. We're just looking at the elite leaderboards and telling you a couple of the athletes that we know from our travels, but they have several divisions there. We actually had some friends from when we visited Turkey in Izmir that were competing on a team as well. So yeah, Eurasia Throwdown put on another nice competition there in Istanbul.
Yeah. Something else that was going on this weekend, we'll just kind of briefly hit on it here.
You were right, PC. Your pronunciation was good. So I apologize.
Well, I hear it enough times here, so where I'm at. Same time, the semifinals for team kicked off, the online semifinals. The leaderboard populated. It's not finalized yet. Obviously, there's some video review, but kind of, I believe it's the top 20 teams who advanced to the game. So some interesting mixtures, but
Halpin was in the chat saying that he's currently working on something with some leaderboard changes. If you are interested in what's going on with the CrossFit Games season, you will get more information by following Known and Knowable about those types of things than you will by following the CrossFit Games themselves. So if that's something that's interesting to you, of the developments on the leaderboards, who's doing what, things that are happening behind the scenes that CrossFit either chooses not to or communicate at all, or communicates via these kind of weird back channel posts on their own site, Known and Knowable can keep you guys up to date on that. What we see here is the current lineup of athletes. I don't know all the athletes on all these teams this year. Every year for the team competition, I usually wait a little bit later in the season to try to dial in on them, because for every bullet point on the leaderboard, it's 4 times as many people to know. But Patrick will tell you that team for Oslo Krieger is a very good team. I again, without looking at every lineup on here, I feel like if they're not the favorite, they're amongst the top 2 or 3 favorites to win in Albany, New York this summer.
Yeah, they're up there with obviously Mayhem. Butcher's Lab had 2 event wins, 2 workout wins, so that's very impressive, especially since Oslo. I think Oslo's really just now catching their stride. That team is Tola, Uda, Ingrid Odenmeyer is just, last year took the, I thought she was done. She had a baby she'd been talking about for a while, but they were able to convince her to just come back, and she's crushing it. And then, of course, Victor Helsinghoff, which I've been we've both been kind of big Victor Helsinghoff fans. And, he's kind of been doing everything individual. I thought it was a smart move by him bringing him. He was a Krieger athlete. And he kind of went his separate way to kind of find his own path. But they convinced him to come back to be a part of this team. I think it's overall the makeup team is going to be pretty fun to watch. A couple other names that the CrossFit Furusik Krieger team. That one is kind of a put together team. Verena from Germany is on it. I'm trying to think who else is on it. It's got, I believe,
Ingrid Tandel.
Yes.
I saw one of them. Yeah.
Henrik and Matthias Peterson.
Marius Peterson.
Marius Peterson. Yes. That was kind of put together last minute, and finished 5th. And then, not bad. The CrossFit 11-24 team, it's essentially the same team back, but they added Jessica Andronzik to the team. They have to be one of the favorites. Greater Heights Overtake, that's kind of a new team. We're used to seeing team Overtake Density, so it's a combination of Greater Heights and Overtake. So
but a lot of experience, a lot of team experience in amongst those 4 athletes. And I think Marco Coppola is done now, so he's kind of in a coaching role, but he's a really experienced team athlete in Texas who's competed all over the place, and will, if he's coaching them, he'll still be a reason why they have success this year.
I had a brief conversation with one of your favorite people, Jenny Hull from Dense Updates, and obviously she's a big fan of that team, and I said it's weird seeing that team without Marco on it.
Is she a big fan of their team? Because she doesn't post very much about him. I think she's a big fan of mine, because she posts a lot about me.
She might be. I mean, we need to send her a couple maybe B.Friendly shirts.
I'll bring her one in Indianapolis. It'll be great to see her.
Is she gonna be?
I've heard that she's coming.
Okay.
Let's see. But I think, but anyway, I just wanted to say about that Overtake team. I think that Sydney Waltz is on that team.
Yes, she is.
She's a pretty good follow on Instagram. She's coaches a lot of young women in the area, it seems like. So I don't. Anyway, they're pretty good though. I think I'm excited to see what they'll do that year, because, like you said, it's kind of taking some pieces and putting them together, but there's a lot of experience to back it up.
Yeah, when you have Marco and Tristan, Patrick, who is, he's one of our favorite coaches out there. He coaches Hattie Canio, was coach of Kelly Baker. By the way, congrats to Kelly Baker, having their baby. So
yesterday or the day before, right?
Yeah, and then also congrats to the Heskeths for, I believe, their 3rd child. It was kind of a difficult birth, but shout out to Phil and Mia on that as well. It looks like everything looks to be okay. I believe they may be still in NICU, but I think things are turning the right way. So if you get a chance, go to Mia's page. She has some just amazing pictures, and just and just like, Phil pretty well. I've gotten to know Mia pretty well. It's just like, those two are just like, they're like the ultimate unknown CrossFit couple. So it's that springtime. A lot of babies are being born. So, but yeah, Tristan Patrick and Shay Williams are the judges there. So it's cool seeing Shay's name again. She's been a member of those overtake teams. And then, that combination, I think it's pretty cool to see there in Texas. Blueprint CrossFit Team AOD. I wonder if that's the same team that they had together for, it's the same team. I wonder if it's the exact team that they had for IF3. So, and then obviously CrossFit Mayhem, CrossFit Invictus. This is a new looking Invictus team. I believe Danny Spiegel is on the team along with Emily Lugman, Phil, and I'm trying to think who the second guy is. But that'll be interesting to watch, to see if like I said, Danny's competing team. CrossFit Proven team. It's a combination of what was the old Underdogs team from last year. They took the women from the Underdogs team that just missed out on the Games Games invite. They are now on Proven. They came over with Kiefer when he moved over to Proven, and they added I think Anthony Yim, who did really well in the Open this past year, and I forgot who the fourth guy is, but someone to keep an eye out on. And then let's see, Franco's Imam. That's I guess our boy is
Look, I don't know all the athletes that are on these teams right now, but what I can tell just by looking at this leaderboard is that the reduction of the games field to 20 is going to create a more competitive field of teams at the CrossFit Games. A lot of these teams, or at least the gyms that they're representing, are very, very familiar to people. 8th Day finished in the top 10 a couple of years ago. TTT always sends teams to the semis and or games. Prestanda has a great team from last year. Every team in the top 20 and a couple below it are familiar gyms with probably some familiar athletes, maybe some names changing places. And this is since the years when there were like 12 to 13 or 14, maybe teams that were all super teams basically competing there. This is the smallest field of athletes that we'll have seen there, but it should be the most competitive top to bottom in a while in the team division. So it's not, I don't think that it's very easy to make it into the top 20 is what I'm trying to say. So for all the teams that end up doing that, congratulations. And for people who like watching the team competition, I think you can be in store for a pretty competitive one once we get to that part of the year.
Yeah. And then what also was released yesterday, head over to, the numerous programming shows out there. I think there's quite a few. Dribble, I think, did a show. I think I'm sure Get With the Program is doing one. But the semifinal workouts for the in-person semifinal was released yesterday. You said you briefly looked at them, but instead of going through all of them, your initial takes on the individual semifinal, and if knowing what you know about the workouts, what athletes do you expect to do really well in that? Just right off the top of your head. Someone like Jeffrey Adler or, whoever.
Well, I expect Jeffrey Adler to do well no matter what the workouts are, but exactly. I haven't thought much about that. What I would say is 30-minute AMRAP. That was cool to see them testing something that's a little bit longer. We've rarely, if ever, even seen a live semifinal event that's 30 minutes long. So that was, I think, cool to expand the testing domain in that regard. That workout that you just had up there with the lunges and the GHDs, I thought was kind of the weirdest of all of them, or the one that I didn't maybe understand how it fit in, but I haven't done any of them yet. I haven't spent too much time thinking about it. So maybe it does fit in. They had the heavy Isabel again, which, it was like, I saw a couple of people who competed at Wodland posting, I'm so excited to do it heavy Isabel again this weekend, sarcastically. And that's the one thing I would say about having the repeat workouts show up at many of these semifinals is if it's uniform at all the semifinals and everyone's only doing it once, that's one thing. But to have it uniform at the semifinals and people are potentially doing it 3 times, like Augustine Raquelme has already done heavy Isabel twice. Now he's going to do it a 3rd time in 3 weeks in competition. Like, I'm not sure if I love that or not. It probably fits in with the programming, but it's just a thought to consider if people are considering whether this is a good idea or not. I thought there was this workout it was like a interval style workout that ended with some clean and jerks at 135. So you got sort of a lighter barbell cycling to go with maybe a heavier one. And then the first workout that I think was listed as the first workout that has the ring muscle ups and the back squats with the handstand walking. I was telling Patrick this last night, like, I won't say that the fittest people will necessarily win that workout, but if you see athletes doing really well on that, that's like, okay, that's an impressive workout to be really good at. So I do think that we'll see some very, very familiar names filtered to the top of that. But if you see an athlete that's a little bit unknown that finishes in the top 10 or 20 on that one, I would take note of that, because it's a pretty unusual workout, I would say. And to be good at those three things in combination is special.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, what that looks like next week when they finalize that leaderboard. And we'll have a clearer picture of what the games field is like, because you're going to have 22 athletes that qualify that will be going to the, at least initially before they do anything. I don't know how the review process is going to be. So we'll be halfway there in terms of getting some of those athletes to the game. So should be interesting.
Let me address a couple comments here.
Sure.
I mentioned that I might bring Jenny a shirt. We don't have any merch for sale. For a lot of the competitions, we just design a shirt for the people that are working for us or some friends of ours that are going to be on site there. So I don't know who you are, but obviously you're watching a lot of our stuff. If you're coming to Indianapolis and you want a shirt, I may be able to get you one, but I would have to know who you are first to do that. He also said, did anyone answer your one-word question about WFP? I just was, obviously I've been removed for the most part from the game season and trying not to think too much about it this year compared to previous years. But I did post something yesterday because I was like, man, for a lot of people being at their first semifinal, having a chance to qualify for the games or being in contention for that, like it was something that was a point of pride for a lot of the athletes. So I posted this little thing about if people would rather qualify for the games or earn a pro card for WFP. And I think a lot of people still don't understand what that actually means to earn a pro card, because we haven't seen a single competition yet, let alone a whole season play out. But it was a 75-25% split on the voting. There was about 1,200 votes. Andrew, I think, put out the exact same poll today because he's also a huge fan of mine. So he's just copying things that I'm doing. It's just this like fun thing that we do. Maybe he'll get different results, but I think I might put that one out again as the year goes on and see how, as people learn more about WFP, how it progresses. Today, WFP posted that they're 10 days out, and I was similarly curious to see what are people thinking about this competition as it's approaching. So here's some things that people said. Unbothered. Chaud, which means hot or in French. Apathetic, tentative, anxious, meh, excited. Counting the seconds until it starts. What a promising project. Well, that was not one word. Excited. Someone just put a pig emoji. Stressed, nervous, underwhelmed. The eye emoji looking to one side. Hopeful, worried, fit, FOMO. So kind of all over the board from just a sampling there that people put in. But yeah, fun question. So thanks for that one.
Anything else you saw there that you want to pull up regarding?
I had started a couple of these things earlier. Yeah. I know you responded to her, but traveling back from the States is not so, or from the Europe to the States is not so bad for me. It's just like a long travel day, but then you basically just stay awake until the time that you would prefer to go to bed if you can. I allow myself to sleep in as much as possible. Like I don't schedule things for early the next day on that one day. And like, I can tell that I'm getting tired now, but I won't have any issue staying awake for like 5-6 more hours. And I think by tomorrow, I'll just be like basically right back into the routine. So just, and also don't have time to rest. Got things to do.
Yeah. I think we pretty much, so we'll have a show tomorrow. We'll preview the men's field for WFP, both Challenger and Pro. Or Pro.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to Indianapolis this Saturday with a few of the people coming in from Finland. So we got to get ahead of that if we're going to do it. Once I get there, we won't have time really to do that. So I sent Patrick all my picks, 1 through 50 on the men's side, 1 through 50 on the women's side. I think he's going to make a post and put it up. We'll maybe have a guest or two on the show to kind of break it down and talk about them a little bit, and get you guys, ready for Indianapolis, because online semis, there's not much to talk about until after the fact. So the next live competition is what's my role for Indy? I have a role for Indy that I used to have with the CrossFit Games season, actually, with the production team. So it's kind of a producer role, and also working with some of the talent. Franling Analytics is supporting on the data side, so I also work with them. So it's yeah, I would say producer is the most simple thing to do, but also working with, obviously there's some new talent as part of the team this year that used to see on the competition floor, like Gabby and Katrin and Annie. So I've been working with them a bit to get them ready. Seth Page also is going to be with us. And although I don't think he needs, he's great at articulating his thoughts, but he hasn't done something like this before. Working with, Lauren Smith and Amy Bream, who are going to be doing the reporting side of things and integrating them to what we're able to do on the broadcast. So producer is probably the easiest way to describe it. And this is a great question, how to watch WFP. I've had a few people asking this recently. I know that WFP will be putting this out in more specific detail in the coming days. The initial stream will not be on YouTube. I do think that it will be available on YouTube later on, but they have a streaming platform that they're working with that they'll be announcing, obviously. And it just allows us to do some things that are sort of limiting on YouTube. So to elevate the production a little bit. I think the production of the broadcast is something that they've taken a big interest in. So stay tuned to find out exactly how, but it'll be free and easy to watch. It'll just be on a different platform than YouTube for the live event.
Are you going to be out there with your cell phone?
It turns out it's just me again, guys. So get ready.
Get ready. It's exciting new. Exciting new means he upgraded his cell phone to
yeah. So I think I don't really exactly know how the integration works on the back end, and I'm not even sure that's above my level. I'm working more, I work here. There's other people doing that stuff. So stay tuned, but through their website on some other external platform, like I said, it'll give us some freedom to do some stuff that be a little bit different flavor of a broadcast, but I think enjoyable one for people to watch.
And don't forget all the languages.
Yes, that's one of the freedoms is that they have. So so actually it's challenging to translate CrossFit speak into some languages because there's not common words that are used. Now, a lot of those words are also they don't use the English word. They may not be a translation for AMRAP. It might just say AMRAP, whatever the language is. But we've aggregated a list of common terms so that we can, and then checked with people that we know from around the world to do the translations of those so that we can provide that. And they English plus 8 other languages are being offered through that platform, which is one of the perks of using it. And that's in the nature of the global aspect of what the World Fitness Project is all about.
Well, cool. Again, I think we covered everything. Again, that's it. We'll have 2 shows this week. We'll have them, I think, roughly the same time. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock set. What is that? That'd be 2 o'clock Central your time.
Yep.
But 2 o'clock Central, both Wednesday and Thursday. We'll preview the men's side on tomorrow, and then on Thursday we'll preview the women's, and we'll have posts up for both. And like Brian said, maybe have try to bring in some guests for those as well. But yeah.
Well, if anyone who's listening to this and listens before they see those preview shows, it's a very competitive field. Like, some of your favorite athletes are going to be predicted to finish in the bottom 10 of the pro field because some of them have to. So I'm definitely prepared for the ridicules and the criticisms. But I made sure to put Jack Farlow high enough in the challenger field, at least to keep Lynn at bay, hopefully.
That's funny.
No, but seriously, when the post goes up, if you see it, put your thoughts, concerns, critiques, love all of that stuff. It helps guide the show. It helps create for fun conversations. There's a ton of athletes coming there. And also the condition that they're going to be showing up on, who knows after the online semifinal, like some of these guys might be pretty beat up. Some of them don't have to do it and might be coming in very fresh. So there's a lot of variables in play. It should be a fun show tomorrow, next few days.
And yeah, Lynn, I'm going to be in Indiana too. So yeah, just a lot of traveling, taking some leave, heading back to the States, and yeah, we'll see. I'll be really close to home. Sucks. Pat McAfee's actually wrestling in St. Louis now. Like, he actually has a match in the pay-per-view.
Pat McAfee is a wrestler?
Yeah, he's wrestled in the past, but he's got a match. I mean, it's like the worst timing. Why WFP? The same time as Backlash, whatever. Yeah, it's funny. And then, yeah, it's just hilarious. Hilarious. Yeah, Lynn, looking forward to see you. What are you doing, PC? I'm going to go to bed. That's what I'm doing. Get some sleep. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was over 2 hours. Pretty good show. Yeah. I think it was worth it because so many great athletes in Wodland. We hopefully did a service to them with the broadcast and also the review today. Congratulations to all the top finishers there and some of the people who got their biggest competition experience under their belt. Thank you to Alfonso for creating that opportunity for them and for inviting us to be involved in it. It was a great weekend for both of us. Refreshing to be back amongst the European community over there. Great to see you, Patrick. And, good luck to everyone who's taking on the semifinals online this week. I don't think those are easy by any means. Obviously, there's a lot of stress involved with that. So we wish everyone the best and are, looking forward to breaking down the WFP fields over the next couple of days.
Yeah. So until then, till tomorrow, everyone in the chat, outside the chat, wherever you go today, tomorrow, the rest of the week, be friendly, our friends.